Okay, and we're live once again. Welcome everyone for making it. We apologize. Last week we weren't around, but we're back today with a wonderful topic. This is the Empower Hour with the one and only Emma Doyle, who has been absolutely doing incredible work with the Virtual Tennis Symposium as well. Everyone, I'm sure, is well aware, Emma, who you are, but just briefly, Emma is obviously a high-performance coach specializing in tennis, but working across all sports. Her specialty is really in, motivation. Her energy is her real point of difference. But more than anything, she is just an absolutely incredible human being. So without further ado, I'd love to pass over to the one and only Emma Doyle. Emma, over to you. Looking forward to today.
Thank you so much, Conrad. Love your introductions. It's just about, I always float back to that time in first year biomechanics where I nearly didn't pass the course. And I certainly had some courage to ask for help. And if it wasn't for you, mate, I wouldn't have got through that course. So thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Centercourt, and everybody else. So now, just if you're, I think we've got one mic. I don't know, Henry, are you able to just mute yourself? That would be awesome. And then we can certainly turn back the microphones on at the end for Q&A. Or as we go along. Thank you, mate. Appreciate it. So where are we today? Just as I share my screen, as I always do, as I go over to sharing it, we will see whereabouts we are living in the Genius model. So as part of the Empowerment Project, as we know, we are at the top. We're in the last module of the top section there. So that's courage. That's exactly where we are. And you can see that obviously it lives under the core unit of confidence. We've only got, would you believe, it's amazing how far we've come. We've actually only got one more module left within the Genius model. And then we're going to certainly have our outro at the end where we reflect on all the modules. But yeah, so we're on module 8 under courage. So that's exactly where we are. So, with courage, I'll just say straight off the bat, it really does give you the confidence and the motivation to achieve your goals in life. One of my favorite lines is, courage is the master of taking action. And as you all know, every single week, what do we do straight away? Or what do we do at the end of every module, or end of each module and the start of the next one? Is, of course, we ask you to take action. It really, talent is not nearly as important as execution. So I really believe that, and courage is the key to taking action. So that is where we're at. So let's have a review and let's look at the unit on direction. So this was the game plan for direction, finding direction. So remember the GROW model. So we just flipped the G and the R, and just go ahead in the chat box and just type in if you achieved the game, or remember if you're a parent, did you work with one of your with one of your son or your daughter? If you're a coach, one of your players, did you actually have a little go at the GROW model and win the game? And so just let me know in the little chat box there so I can see it. That would be awesome. For some reason my chat box is not showing on this computer. Conrad's we've got some people winning the game, have we, mate? Just, I think you're muted, sorry.
Apologies. Yes, no, we haven't got any answer in there yet, but I gave you one, and I absolutely have been using the GROW model with my little monsters, and it's really worked well.
Yeah, fantastic. And just remember to switch the G and the R. That's really important when you when you're not sure where to start, or you want to work on something. It's always best to just say, hey, well, what's actually going on for you right now? So that was the game plan for finding your direction. So that is, again, each week we ask you to take action. That was last week. All right.
We got one answer. We got one in there for you, if I might share it. At the end of the last session, Jing Wen wanted to make a cake, and she did. She made a Black Forest cake with her niece.
That is fantastic. I love that. So I'm sure you went through those steps to get there, and that's awesome feedback. Thank you, Jing. Appreciate it. All right. So as we do each week, let's begin with our potential unforced errors. What's your why? What's the motivation behind actually being here on this webinar around courage? Well, potentially some of the problems that you might have is that you're afraid to try new things. So again, let's jump in the chat box. I'm going to make this interactive. Have a guess out of 100%. So just have a go. So it's insert the stat. So have a guess. People would rather die than change. What percentage of the world out of 100% do you think? And Comrade, you'll have to give me the answers because my chat box isn't showing up. So have a go, and remember again, just put yourself out there. Be courageous and take action. Just throw a number somewhere between 0 and 100% in the chat box with regards to what percentage of people would rather die than actually make change. Anyone want to have a guess?
I gave my answer, Em, just while we're waiting on others. I said 10%. That's a raw guess.
Yep. Any others coming through?
Not just yet. I feel the keyboard's on fire. There we go. Hung's giving me 20%. Jingwen's giving me 25%. Lauren's giving me 10%.
Okay. Thank you everyone for having a go. So here's what's really going to floor you. You ready for this stat? 90% of people would rather die than change. Now, yeah, you're like, how is that even possible? And if you think about it, it's as human beings, we're put on this planet to survive, and staying, like, growing and actually stretching your comfort zone and really continuing to evolve as a human is not always comfortable, and it's not always fun. So, even if you think about, somebody, again, who's maybe addicted to sugar or something along those lines, people would rather continue to eat sugar than actually make change, and so forth. So, it's an astounding statistic, but this is the reality. So you're stuck in your bubble. Perhaps you're afraid of success, your own success. If you take action, my goodness, some people are like, well, what if that happened? I don't know if I could handle that. And even in a conversation I had only 20 minutes ago, perhaps an unforced error you may have is that the grass is always greener. So on the flip side, the grass may be greener on the other side. And so therefore you're never sure what you want to do because, I should be doing this, or I should be doing my stretching, but I want to go to the mall. So you end up doing nothing because you're trapped in the grass is always greener. So you end up not taking action. So there's some of the potential unforced errors that I experience with some of my clients, and that I see with regards to courage. So just have a moment to reflect, and if you feel brave, that is one of our strategies today, by the way. So feel free to put it in the chat box. But what are some of your potential unforced errors with regards to courage? What stops you? Is it your confidence? Is it peer pressure? Is it things that listening to other voices all the time? So therefore, you end up not knowing how to be more courageous. So have a little reflect on your own potential unforced errors. All right. As we do, we flip our unforced errors into winners. So potentially, instead, you could say to yourself, I embrace new opportunities. You adopt a growth mindset. I love to learn. Life is juicy. Life is exciting. Life is fun. I take action and I learn from my mistakes. If you want to be courageous, then taking action. And if it doesn't work out, remember, you can learn from those mistakes. That's the promise of this webinar. We're going to do so many cool things, especially with regards to courage and courage living in the gut. So we're going to talk a lot about that and the neuroscience behind that, and why that's so important to listen to your gut, to trust your gut, and potentially help you with regards to what might be stopping you in taking action. So flip your unforced areas into winners, work on your reframing, and potentially whatever it is that you're struggling with, how could you flip that? How could you reframe that so that you can be more true to your authentic self and take action? So flip it as we do every single week. And as potentially you're reflecting on your own flip-its, I'd love to share a story. I always, to conclude section 1, I always share a bit of a story. Now, this is a personal story, and it's a little bit, always like to be a little bit vulnerable. So this is well, the background to this story is after I got my degree in exercise science with Conrad, I basically was in a situation where I wanted to get overseas experience, and no one would give me a job. So I rang, and at that time, Florida was the mecca of tennis. And so I obviously had no idea about visas. I knew a student visa from when I played college tennis. But essentially, I rang these academies. This is a photo from Saddlebrook Academy at 4 o'clock every single day, their time, for 4 weeks. I rang all the big academies, and no one would give me a job. No one would even return my calls. But I left plenty of messages. All I knew was the names of like the directors. And so I rocked up anyway and rented myself a car straight off the plane and drove myself to Saddlebrook and got lost on the way, and all sorts of crazy stories. And I met the director, and he goes, "You're that crazy Australian who's been calling me every day at 4 o'clock. And I said, "Listen, if you'll give me free food and accommodation for 1 week, I'll coach for free. And if at the end of the week, if you think I'm no good, then please get rid of me. If you think that I've got half a chance, and I'd love a job here." And I did that at every single academy. And then in the end, it was almost like I could choose which one I wanted to work at. So this was incredible. Saddlebrook, at the time, Pete Sampras and Martina Hingis was there training, Capriati. And so this is me having that experience. And then, next thing you know, I'm watching, there's Richard Williams. I was writing down all the notes, and he came up to me, goes, "Little girl, what are you doing taking down notes on this training session?" And Serena was there with the beads on, and there's a very young Miss Emma Doyle. You can see 23 years of age, and he was like, "Please don't take any notes." I was like, "Oh, look, I'm just writing down the drills so I can remember them." And when I had the opportunity to talk to her, all she wanted to talk about was shopping down Chapel Street, which is a famous street in Melbourne, and her favorite coffee shops, when I wanted to ask her about the drills and the tennis. And so that was a great lesson in rapport building. But the moral of the story is, for me, that experience taught me how to learn the look. I would stand behind these great coaches and I go, "Do I see what they see?" And it was courageous. It was one of the most courageous things I've ever done, because it was such an early experience for me to get that really raw coaching sort of feeling. And that's sort of how I've always sort of lived my life. And this next photo is just the under 12 Australian team, the first ever team I took away. And it was just a team to New Zealand. But I didn't all of a sudden become the Australian Junior Fed Cup captain. I had to first take the 10s in Melbourne, then my state team, and then this was my first Australian team, the 12s. Then I took the 14s, the 16s, and then that's the photo from last year with the Junior Fed Cup team. So for me, it was all about, and certainly the way I've been raised as well, I guess, being number 3 in the third sibling within four children, that if you want to be heard, you have to speak up. And if you want to speak up, then you have to take action. And what is the worst thing that can happen? They can say no, or they can say, "We're not going to give you a job." But if you don't make those decisions, then you'll never know. But certainly, I think when I look back at my young self, I knew absolutely nothing except how to take action, and I really had no idea how to be a tennis coach. So, sometimes you've just got to shoot for the stars, and some people, again, we'll talk about this later, but some people can stretch their comfort zone one layer at a time, and some people need to just throw themselves out of their comfort zone. And I think if you can find that balance within your personality, then I think that's really courageous. So just thought I'd share some personal stories and photos out of the archives for this unit. All right, what are our 5 strategies? Let's get into it. Our first strategy is actually defining courage. So interestingly, the root of the word courage is cor, and it's the Latin word for heart. Now, in one of its earliest forms, the word courage had a very different definition from what it does today. So courage originally meant to speak one's mind by telling all of one's heart. I mean, can you imagine that? Can you imagine in today's world if we actually just all really spoke what's coming from deep within our heart? It would be quite amazing, and how authentic that is. I mean, so often we don't always speak our truth because we're so busy weighing up all the factors, and so therefore, again, we don't really say what we think. I know, again, as a young coach, I'd sit in a room, predominantly surrounded by 95% male coaches, and I wouldn't say a word in a 1-hour meeting, even I'd have lots of thoughts. Unfortunately, that's a bit different now. Time to get interactive again in the chat box. And again, I don't mean I've gone with a few doom and gloom statistics, but let's have fun with that. The average age of death. First of all, do we think women live longer than men, or do men live longer than women? So just if you think the answer's, you think women live longer, just put women in the chat box. And if you think it's the other way around.
We've got Jingwen, women, all of us said women.
Correct. Well done. We're on fire in the chat box. That's an average age of 83 for women and 79 for men. And, I think the reason I even bring this up is because even if we even think of some of our parents, I know, I look at those numbers, I think, oh my goodness, that's very close to my parents' age. And I think that when we're talking about courage, we're often talking about legacy. Now, I know some of you listening, are definitely not anywhere near those numbers, but being courageous is about leaving a legacy. Like, it is about saying, what do I want people to say about me? What is it I want my life to stand for? And I think the more you can connect with, remember the module on purpose, the more you can leave a really defining legacy. That'll give you courage to take action now, no matter what age you are. So I think that's why that's really interesting. And I am always fascinated by the Scandinavian countries and the way that they govern and the way they live their life. And there's the Nordic country of Finland has a cultural construct known as sissu. And sissu enables individuals to push through unbearable challenges. It's a term that dates back over 500 years, and it's still deeply embedded within the Finnish culture. And essentially, if you think about sissu, another way that they describe it is it's called the action mindset. So when I was really looking at the definition of courage, I thought it's action mindset. It's sissu. It's actually those who take action are courageous. Those who actually take a step forward when everyone says you should take a step back, obviously within a safe environment, that I think are showing real courage. And just remember, I said this early on, but we are really programmed as human beings. We're programmed enough to ensure survival, okay, and not to evolve any further than that. However, obviously, in order to thrive and evolve, we must stretch our comfort zone. And I know that all of you on this webinar, you wouldn't be here if you weren't interested in that growth mindset, in that stretch principle that we spoke about on many other modules, not just one module, that 1%, that stretch cycle. Onions have layers again. That action mindset allows us to do that. And one thing I'll be talking about in the summary is the 6 human needs. And within the 6 human needs, the first 4 is what everybody needs, the first 4 human needs. And the 5th human need is growth. And not everybody strives for growth, because remember, 90% of people would rather what? Stay in the bubble than change. So not everybody aspires for that. If you want to be a high performance mindset, if you want to be an athlete, you have to push beyond and focus on all 6. So if you want to know what the other 5 are, you're going to have to join me on the outro on the outro module. But cultivating the action mindset at its deepest level is about awakening potential. I promise you that. That was strategy number 1. Strategy number 2 is that action is greater than perfection. So, Conrad, can you type in the chat box for me, mate? There's a great TEDx talk by a woman, and I'll spell it for you, Reshma, Reshma, and the second name is Saujani. Did you get that?
Yep, and that's a TEDx talk?
Yep, and I think the title is Bravery Not Perfection is the title. And she disrupts the status quo. She ran for Congress, and she talks about how girls are raised to be perfect and boys are raised to be brave. So it's a great TEDx on the take-home message from that TEDx talk that I highly recommend that you take a watch. Is that taking action? It's like 70% is better than perfection, and we'll get to that. That's definitely one of our tactics. I've already told you what our 3rd tactic is already today, because again, if you want to also know something better than even you may know it now, then teach that to others. Teaching something to others is how you take action. And don't wait for your speech to be perfect, because it may never be. And I know, even though, yes, you can prepare as much as you want. I know with my TEDx talk was, it was 6 months preparation, 33 drafts over in 13 minutes. And a guy in a bright orange cowboy hat walks down into the front row and sits down in the front row. And because they'd forgotten to, and I was the first speaker, they'd forgotten to close the door. I thought to myself, oh my goodness, what is that guy in the bright orange cowboy hat doing? What does he do? And in that, my whole talk just left me for it felt like 10 seconds. And it looks like I'm pausing for effect. But in all honesty, without that preparation, everything just came back to me, and thank goodness everything was fine. But just remember, taking action is greater than perfection. Strategy number 3, and is maybe some of you younger people might not know who this person is, but Madonna. She's got a great song, Express Yourself. That is strategy number 3 in being courageous. The more you can live your authentic truth and I always talk about find your inner coach or your inner voice and actually live that. Because one of the biggest reasons for not taking action is when you feel a bit sick in your stomach, is because potentially there's conflict within your team. So your coach is saying one thing, and your parents are saying another thing. And so, but you've got your opinion as well, but you don't say it. I'm working with a player at the moment, and she is definitely stuck in that situation. And she struggles to say, hey, I don't think, I don't know why I needed to do this drill when I really feel like we should be heading in this direction because of X, Y, and Z. So I'm not saying the athlete always knows what's best for them as well, but I am saying if you want to be courageous, then speaking your truth is, in the long run, is going to be better for you, because at the end of the day, everybody sits down to a banquet of consequences. One of my favorite all-time lines in the world, that one. And you can only sit down to a banquet of consequences if you've been honest up front, been truthful, and no matter how hard it is, because it will come back to potentially bite you, not in a great in a great way as well. So just remember, if you want strategies around expressing yourself, again, teach somebody else a topic that you're passionate about, and tell them through your lens cap. Tell them a story. Like the story that I shared with you earlier about my life, that's my life. No one can take that story away from me, and no one can tell me it didn't happen, because it's my story. So that's a really great way to really express that your authentic self and be vulnerable. Vulnerability is one of your greatest assets when it comes to expressing yourself. And again, I was into my my looking at my definitions, but vulnerability comes from the Latin word for wound, vulnus. So vulnerability is a state of being open to injury or appearing as you are. Vulnerability, appearing as you are. I thought, wow, how cool is that? So I might just pause there, Conrad, for a breath, and just ask you if there's anything resonate.
No, absolutely. I love your story about Saddlebrook, because I'm guessing we should do a timeline check, but probably about the same time. I graduated from college where we both went, and the next day I bought a one-way flight to London and did the same thing. I happened to go to Queens with my rackets and turn up, and hey, who do I talk to about a coaching job? I ran into Ian Barclay, who put me out there to play sets, and next thing I knew, I had a job. And so it was exactly the same. I literally got off a plane the day before. And so I was remembering that story, and, you know, that type of rawness and vulnerability that you're talking about now, it's certainly challenging. I mean, I remember how scared I was. I remember I was really, really petrified about what I was doing. Looking back at it, what are you scared of? You're a 23-year-old little puppy, right? But I can really understand how a lot of people would feel when there's a challenge in front of them, whether it be, you know, right now I'm talking to some kids who are looking at turning full-time tennis players. I can imagine that that's a big step. I mean, socially, etc. There are other kids who are thinking, you know, am I going to be good enough to go to college, or am I going to just be a recreational tennis player? And I'm constantly encouraged, look, just have a go. Like, what do you got to lose at the end of it? And so I think that this is a really great topic. Courage is something that I think you find. I'm not sure how many people are born with it. Like, maybe it's innate, but I think you have to find it. You have to challenge yourself to know that you have courage. And that won't happen by staying in the bubble, being one of those 90%. And the other thing that sort of jumped out at me, and again, sharing a personal story, myself and my family were in China for 15 years. And, you know, literally within 2 weeks, we made a decision to move, shift, sell our business, and move to this part of New Jersey that I knew nothing about. I'd never been here. And we just said, let's do it. And so it's worked out to be amazing. Like, I'm working with you, so there are so many rewards that you could never know that are available until you actually do it. So yeah, that was what sort of jumped out at me.
Yeah. And if we can remember, piggybacking off what you just said, the confidence formula, remember, equals time plus experience.
Yes.
So unless you take action to throw yourself out there, put yourself out there, remember, you either stretch yourself or you can jump out of your comfort zone, whatever is best for your personality. But unless you do that, you'll stay within that bubble. And when we stay within that bubble, it really it doesn't serve us. We don't get true growth experiences. So thanks for sharing that, and being really vulnerable as well. Strategy number 4 is what I call the feedback loop. So this is really about asking others for honest feedback. So even in your example, Conrad, if somebody's thinking about, should I play college or should I go pro, actually getting honest feedback is, and I think in today's generation, the way we deliver feedback is equally important is how they hear feedback. Because so many times somebody might say something that's then taken the wrong way, and then they never take action on that because that one person said something that maybe wasn't quite great information. or maybe it was great information and they choose not to listen as well on the other flip side. But you know, when I was obviously putting this webinar together, I was actually a bit surprised myself on how many strategies we've already covered to help people understand feedback. You know, we've certainly covered how to receive, always begin with 2 positives. We've definitely covered A4D. What are your 2 specific areas for development? We've covered reframing. Remember the week that we did laser questions. What's the truth here? So someone's giving you feedback either on your performance as a sports person, or if you've delivered a presentation, you're getting feedback. What's the truth? Is this really something I need to take on, or is this just this person is affected by a prior experience and they're just projecting all their energy onto me? Could I do the grow model on myself after somebody gives me feedback and says, you need to whisper more to draw the crowd in, to really let you know what's an important message? Do I need to change my tone? Do I need to use my hands more? Do I need to get fitter? Do I need to get faster? Do I need to have a more of a growth mindset? And do a little grow model on yourself. And then just remember, every once in a while, people will give you feedback when you didn't ask for feedback, and use the Justin IPOV. Okay, it's Justin. When somebody just starts giving you their opinion on your game and you need to do this and that, you need to change coaches, you need to change academies. That's an interesting point of view, Justin IPOV. And then for those giving feedback, please, please, please ask for permission. And I say that again, being vulnerable. I know one of my closest friends, I gave, you know, her feedback on a presentation straight away. And she wasn't ready. B, she was on a high straight after it. And I just gave her one real quick tip because I was sort of racing out the door and the timing was wrong. And the quick tip that really was so insignificant, she took as, you know, me saying the presentation was, you know, was totally missed the mark, when that actually wasn't even what I said. But if you don't ask, can I share an observation, and begin with 2 positives, then it's really not worth giving feedback. So to be courageous, you have to be able to accept feedback and potentially give feedback once you get permission, depending on whether you're a coach or a parent, or even an athlete. You may be giving a peer feedback. You know, if you're a team, you're in a lacrosse team, a hockey team, and you want to give one of your teammates feedback, make sure you ask for permission. That's real courage. This could be potentially, if you're going to write anything down, now's the time to get a pen and paper. This is really, really awesome. And I'm actually a qualified M-braining coach. So M-braining is about the 3 brains, the head, the heart, and the gut. Grant Susler and Marvin Oka, they have a great book called M-braining. So the letter M and then capital B, as in the word brain, and then ing, is the process of aligning and harnessing the power of your multiple brains. So the latest scientific research shows that you have 3 brains. You have complex, adaptive, and fully functional neural networks or pathways or brains in not only your heart, so I should say not only your head, but also your heart and your gut. And so I highly recommend you checking out that book. Because it really is the highest expressions are compassion, which lives in the heart, the creativity or the thinking lives in the head, and then the courage lives in your gut. So the number one thing that you can take away from M-braining, or I certainly have, and I work so much with this on my clients, is the steps. So step 1, remember, this comes back to you making a courageous decision on something, either about your parenting, your coaching, your athleticism. Check in with your heart first. And you can see in the picture there that my mum threw together for me. I said, Mum, I want an image that captures these 3 things. She sort of threw that last minute together for me. You can see here, the heart is what you want. Your heart says, I really want this. This is something I really, really want. And that could be a championship. It could be a ranking. But often if you go with your heart, you want something that badly, sometimes it actually is harder to reach because you want it too much. And so therefore you get tight or therefore you choke up because you want it so bad. But always check in with your heart first. Then here's step 2. The interesting part about step 2 is then to check in with your head. So again, if you look at the picture, it's balancing the wants and then the shoulds. So that, again, the example that I gave earlier in talking just 20 minutes before we jumped on this webinar was you potentially your friends have asked you to go to the mall, but you have practice, and after practice is finished, you know that you need to do, half an hour to 45 minutes of stretching. So your heart potentially, especially as a young teenager, you may want to go to the mall with your friends, okay? But your head says, you know what, if I put in the work and I do this extra stretch or this extra stretching session, I know that I'm going to recover faster and I'm going to be more agile the next day for training, depending on where you're at in your periodization of your training program. But here's where you make the decision. You ready? Obviously, what's step 3 going to be? And I'd love everyone to do this just now as well, is to if you just place your hands on your gut. And if you just take a deep breath in, close your eyes if you want to. And if you just, whatever the decision is, and if we just use the example that I'm choosing now, check in with your gut. Hey, should I go to the mall, or, should I stay and do this stretching session? And your gut will tell you the answer. Your gut is where courage lives. It's also where fear lives. So that's the oxymoron in this. So if you do end up, say, then deciding to go to the mall, but the whole time you feel a bit sick in your gut, then potentially it wasn't the right decision for you to make. Now, if your gut feels good, you went to the mall and your gut feels good because potentially you're going to stretch later on that night, or potentially you're in a part of your periodization where it's not as critical because you've got the day off the next day, then your gut will feel pretty good about it. So I'm sure you can also experience fear in the gut before a big match or a big situation. You got those butterflies in the stomach. It's also one of the things, especially in tennis and probably in a lot of other sports, when you get nervous, what's the first thing that stops? Your feet. You get concrete feet. Now, by taking action, fast steps, for example, is a way for you to then shift that nervousness and shift that feeling in your gut just by taking action. So just by taking steps forward, you can all of a sudden shift that fear from maybe your gut to even the base of your spine. And just use your thumb and just press on the base of your spine behind your body there and push yourself forward when you're not sure whether you should take action. Just push. It's like a little joystick. Use your thumb like a joystick, the old school computer games, and just push on your spine to take action. But M-braining is by far one of my all-time favorite strategies in the world. So first person to type in the chat box, what was strategy number 3? What was strategy number 3? Let's see, Conrad, is someone who's in, who's on, and
look.
What have we got?
Ginny Wen's in there. She beat me. Express yourself.
Love it. Love it. All right. So everyone knows where we are, which is our tactics. What are the 3 tactics? Very simple, because I know those strategies were a little complex. So really, I've gone with really easy tactics. The first one is just pick an A4D, which of course stands for area for development. Okay. Not a weakness. All right. Just pick an area for development that you know in your gut that you need to be more courageous. What's an area where you need to get some more courage? And just pick that area. Perhaps it's speaking up. Maybe it's just using that authentic voice. Maybe it's taking ownership more over packing your own bag. It doesn't have to be big as well. Okay, I'll get to that in a minute. Tactic number 2 is tell someone, like, buddy up, like put yourself out there. If you say, I'm going to, I want to do a speech down at my local, do they have RSL clubs in America?
No, I don't think RSLs.
Okay. But let's say you want to do at a local hall or your local council hall or school hall, and you want to do a talk about your sport, and you want to raise money for a trip that you want to go on. Then tell someone about it, buddy up, and that'll help you be more accountable with regards to, actually taking action when you like an accountability buddy. And finally, tactic number 3 is what I call the bucket list. Oh, sorry, no, I beg your pardon. This is under buddy up. So this is still under tactic 2. So there's a guy in Australia, he's called the bucket list guy. And I'm just going to put these up on the screen, but take a photo of this. So remember, a lot of people think bucket list, jump out of a plane. Okay. But as an athlete or as a well-rounded person, check out this bucket list. Maybe it's just who would you like to meet? Your proudest achievements. Buy that special something. Ultimate challenges. Conquer a fear. Maybe you're just going to do a kind act for somebody else. How could you express yourself? Think creatively. You could take music lessons, singing lessons. What is it that you want to leave a legacy? Idiotic stuff is in there, of course. You could satisfy a curiosity, and what is some of travel adventures when the world gets back to something how we used to know it. But you might want to just take a photo of this list. It's Travis Bell is the bucket list guy. So they're his little, what does my bucket list actually mean? But these are some ideas for you to get some more courage around, and share that with somebody, or maybe even make a list yourself of what are those things that you would like to do. So feel free by all means to take a photo of that screen, or I'm sure we can send it to you if anyone wants a copy of that. And finally, tactic number 3 is the 70% principle. And you'll see back in that TEDx talk that I was talking about, I believe that they say that women apply for jobs when they meet, it's almost like they've got to be 95% of the criteria, whereas men will apply for the jobs when they're 60%. Oh yeah, I can do that. The other 40% I'll learn on the fly, or it doesn't matter that I don't know it. So I always think I call it the 70% principle. The 70% principle has been huge in my life for COVID, because I know, I've certainly been a perfectionist in the past. So even launching my new sort of online tennis website, I was like, oh, this video doesn't perfectly show the perfect grip or the perfect angle, or the sound's not quite right. 70% is good enough. Take action, put it out there, and that then you can, or change and adapt things as you go along. So it's bravery, not perfection, is the 70% principle, is tactic number 3. All right. So what's our game plan? As we do every week, for 15 points, spark an idea. What's that? Buddy up and, tell someone what it is. For 30 points, check in with your heart. Like, make sure it's something that you really want. That's something that's important to you. That's something maybe that that your fear has really been stopping you in the past. Then go, of course, up to your head. What are the logical steps? I know I ran a half marathon last year. Again, I just chose that goal. I didn't really know how to do it. And then of course contacted a friend of mine, told her I wanted to do it before my birthday. So she wrote me out a training program. That's the logical steps, so that I could make the half marathon. And then, where does courage live? Everybody knows it now, in the chat box. Where does it live? It lives in the, type it in. So I know that you were listening and that you were taking it all in, because it definitely lives in the
gut.
Yes.
And we got the answer. Everyone's paying attention, Em.
Love it. All right. So let's celebrate. Let's see. Got a different computer today. The ball is in your, I just missed it. And that is how we take action. Next week is module 9. That completes our genius model. And it's all about communication. So I think I shared this last week, but the conflict resolution strategy is definitely there next week, on how you can talk about being brave. Having a courageous conversation is very, very brave. How you can have great relationships, real relationships, going from surface to real, and that lives under the core component of relationships. Oh, that now I was meant to hit my ball at the screen. I was one step ahead of myself today. The ball's in your court. Take action, and we've got about perfect 11 minutes as I stop sharing my screen for some Q&A. So maybe we could start with, now I can see the chat box again. What does anyone want to be brave and type in the chat box? What's one area that they're an A4D with regards to courage? What is it that they need to step up in? What's something that they want to be more courageous with? Does anyone want to share, or everyone's still thinking about it?
It's a good question, though. It's a very, very deep question. You don't want to make those comments or calls lightly. And Lauren's told you taking ownership, and that's a really strong one.
Yep. And I love that. And I would then say, make sure that you check in with your head for the logical steps on what specifically, remember, that's such a powerful question. What specifically are you going to take ownership over? And then, because your gut will know, your gut will be able to tell you whether, do you really need to take ownership over that, or is it really something else? When you're really honest with yourself, I'm sure we can all relate. The gut is amazing. And even the language, how we talk to ourselves, we often say, oh, that person's a pain in my gut, or, it's amazing the language that we use when you really understand that the embraining principle is, it's crazy how you can reframe that and turn things around. Speak up with my ideas in a meeting when they're not perfect. 70% is the principle that we are after. Back yourself, and what's the worst thing that can happen? You learn from your mistakes. Thank you. I love that one. Really, really good. Conrad, what else do you think with regards to courage?
I popped in there, what I'd like to do personally, action all the ideas that are real and doable, and not procrastinate on those concepts. So take the hard decision. What I mean by that is, it's more, I guess, related to what my particular professional goals are at this moment. There's some very difficult things that I'm trying to achieve, and a lot of them have taken a lot of time, I guess, to get in a position to actually move forward. And so this next month for us is huge, because we're leading into it, like, as you know, a new time for the sports industry. So we're trying to do some really difficult stuff that's requiring a lot of cooperation from a lot of different people. And so it's easy to avoid that, but we're just going through it. And you've got to stay diligent. Yeah.
And the gut will know. The gut, when you trust it, when you learn to read it, when you learn to listen to your gut, it'll show you the path.
Yeah, I agree.
I know that sounds, a lot of people might think that sounds flaky, but one of the coolest stories from one of my, I have a business partner back in Melbourne in sports NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and he was telling me a story about a client he was working with who was just having some real anxiety, with regards to just general sort of life stuff. And he's like, well, what does it look like? What does it feel like? She's like, it's like I've got black crows in my belly, like in my stomach, and the crows are just eating away and they're festering, and I can't, I'm struggling to really navigate and take action on these particular things. And he was like, well, what if we change the crows from black to white? And she was like, oh, okay, cool. And then he was like, well, what if you shifted the crows from festering and eating away at the front of your stomach? What if we push them to the back of your stomach? Like, okay. And then, did they change shape or color or intensity? And it's a bit of a long story, but the short version is they changed, from these festering black crows to being white angels, or giving her wings and helping her sort of take action in the world. And for me, there's no more powerful story to explain the importance and the what would be the right word, the tuning into the gut, and listening to it. Because when you want to make a big decision in your life, it'll know. it'll know. So, and no matter what age you are, even kids are so, I got a gut feeling about this person, gut feeling about this situation, gut feeling about something's not right here. Learn to trust it, learn to listen to it.
No, I agree with that entirely. Instincts, right? So,
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, parenting, and I'm a parent, and that's all I'm trying to do is develop the reality of my own kids being able to make the right decisions at the right times when challenged. And that's always going to be, one of the greatest challenges, I guess, as a parent. So, yeah, letting go as well, right? You got to be courageous to let go.
Right.
So,
that's courageous, because what your heart wants for your kid is often protection and safety and nurture. But what the kid wants is to have this adventure. So you can both have completely different wants, but then if you logically go through the steps, both of you, on how to take steps forward, then you can trust your gut. Hi.
that's little Valentina.
Hi, Valentina. How are you?
Good.
Good. We were just talking about you.
Sorry.
No, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. So I think even with kids, though, seriously, teaching them how to trust their gut and listen to their instincts is critical. So I love that. Any other questions?
Not in the chat box at this time. Last chance, guys. No more questions, Em, at this time.
All right. Well, Lauren and I had if she doesn't mind me saying, a really great discussion earlier about leadership. So in a team when she's potentially wanting to make a decision, but being pulled in other directions or being influenced, especially with peers and other choices. So Lauren, if you don't mind unmuting yourself, based on the webinar tonight, was there any strategies or tactics within tonight's webinar that you think that you could now use within your toolkit to help with some of those things?
Yeah, definitely like the gut strategy, like when you feel like something's off, like you just kind of like feel it in your gut. And I have experienced that before.
And I think it definitely with peer pressure and with, certainly every single teenager experiences it. So, but being able to, continue to find your authentic voice, which is strategy number 3. And I was mentioning to Lauren, there's a great book by Stephen Biddulph called Raising Girls. And he talks about those 11 to 14, that age range is finding her soul. She's finding her soul. So, often when you compare yourself to others all the time, then you never really know what you're good at. And so you're not really navigating you don't know where you fit into the world. But trusting your gut and saying, hey, you know what, actually I am good at this, or I am good at certain things, can help you then make better choices and know how to authentically trust yourself. Does that make sense, Lauren? Yeah. Awesome. Good use of your time, the last hour. Awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. All right. Well, Conrad, if there's nothing else, we'll maybe wrap it up, and we hope to see everybody, I promise, next week, same time, same place. And then obviously after that last module, we'll be doing an outro, and we'll be looking at all the modules. You'll be reflecting on sort of, we use a red light, orange light, green light principle to give yourself a mark where you started and where you are at now, and also sharing the 6 human needs. Remember the 5th one is growth, and not everybody aspires. Everyone needs the first 4, but the 5th one is courage, is growth, is taking action. So I'm excited to share those.
Can't wait, Em. I think, again, we'll remind everyone, obviously it's summer holidays, a few people away, but grab your buddies, bring them on. Let's all invite 1 or 2 friends or teammates, because this stuff is really incredible. And Emma, again, you've got a way of making these, intangible things very tangible and very achievable. So I know I'll be actioning some courage this week, and we challenge everyone else to do the same.
Yep. I certainly had a lot of courage on the weekend, and I'm glad I did. So, everyone, I'm someone who lives and breathes these principles as well myself. So I'm glad everyone got a lot out of it. Thank you, Hong. Thank you, all the regulars. I appreciate you so much for being live. To me, that's huge. That is taking action right there. So thank you in the chat box. My pleasure. Thanks, everybody.
Well done. Thanks a lot, Em.
Thanks, Conrad. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Pleasure, Lauren. Pleasure.